Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Future of Senses, a program we are producing together with our partner VSP. I'm King Yetzgash here on the Matter team, and our mission is to accelerate the pace of change of healthcare, and we do several things to advance that purpose. First off, we run an incubator for healthcare startups. Since we launched back in 2015, we've worked with 1,000 companies from around the world that range from very early stage to growth stage startups. Our member companies have raised more than $5 billion to fuel their growth. We also run a plethora of accelerators, anywhere from 6 to 8 per year, all in partnership with large health systems, life science companies, payers, and associations. We also work with large enterprises to help them build their innovation capabilities. We have a suite of education, training, and insight services that help them make sense of emerging technologies and figure out how to harness them. We are also a nexus for people who are passionate about healthcare innovation. We bring people together to be inspired, to learn, and to connect with each other. We work with organizations like VSP to put together events such as this one today. For today's conversation is about the future of senses in healthcare. The human experience is intimately connected to the 5 senses: sight, smell, hearing, taste, and touch. These senses serve as our gateway to the world, allowing us to perceive our surroundings, engage with others, and savor life's precious moments. They work in harmony with our brain, providing vital information to keep us safe and thriving. Our discussion today will dive into key trends and technologies that are shaping the future of our senses and paving the way for a new era of human experience. We put together this program with one of our corporate partners, the VSP Global Innovation Center, which is the innovation hub of VSP Vision. VSP is America's largest vision company with a mission to empower human potential through sight, with 85 million members and a network of more than 41,000 doctors. As you'll see, VSP recently published a report on the future of senses, and we have 3 leaders with us today to discuss the space. If you're interested in reading the report, feel free to scan the QR code that you see on the screen before you. So for our panel today, Dr. Charles Rodenkirk is the CEO of SharperSense and a neural engineer focused on creating bioelectronic technologies to improve lives by addressing neurological disorders and impairments. Tarun Raj, our co-founder of Reality Center, is dedicated to enhancing the human experience through interactive technologies and immersive storytelling, is currently focused on developing AI-enabled biofeedback solutions for mental health. Dr. Catherine Song, founder and CEO of Soundable Health, is a technology leader with over 2 decades of experience, pioneering the use of sound for medical diagnosis and monitoring through digital audible biomarkers to enhance healthcare delivery. Moderating today's conversation will be Ruth Yamtubian, head of the VSP Global Innovation Center. Ruth is an innovation expert with extensive experience in driving impactful initiatives in healthcare and technology, previously serving as a global consultant and director at AT&T Foundry, where she promoted startup solutions and developed thought leadership platforms. Thank you again for joining us today, and I look forward to the conversation. So if you have any questions for Charles, Tarun, and Catherine, please drop them in the Q&A function, and Ruth will do her best to weave them into the conversation as we go. So with that, I will pass the microphone to Ruth, and we can go ahead and get started with our discussion. Thank you so much.
Fantastic. All right. Thank you, Matter team, for inviting us to have this very unique and special conversation today about the future of senses. As was shared, I'm Ruth. I head up the VSP Global Innovation Center, and we're really a hub for reimagining the way that eye care and eyewear is delivered to the world. And we're also VSP's lens into the future. And we don't often think about the vision care space as part of healthcare, but it's connected to a whole system. And so we're representing not only our organization VSP through innovation, but also providers and clients and members, and so many different groups are kind of depending on us to be a lens into the future. And so we bring a lot of tools and methodologies to be the tip of the spear in undefined potential future spaces. And as part of that effort, we produce a series of futures reports. So this discussion was kind of meant to bring our latest futures report to life on the future of senses. It's our 8th report, so definitely go check that out. We'll have a link at the end. But again, we act as a resource not only for our organization, but for the industry to push everyone forward. So before we dive into our discussion, I think I just want to reference that many of us here in the healthcare space we're familiar with the wave about a decade ago of IoT, where Internet of Things dominated the conversation. And I think we were just scratching the surface with solutions like connected pill bottles and connected hospital beds. And today we're really witnessing just the beginning of an incredible evolution, transforming our human experiences through the Internet of Senses. So how do we have connected senses? How do we enhance and digitize our senses? We're not just making devices smarter or items smarter, we're empowering ourselves. So this is a big technological leap, and it's important for us as a vision care provider because our senses have to do with well-being, with productivity, with our health. And so I think after today, you'll see from our panelists how deeply intertwined our senses are into the well-being, productivity, and health of all of us as individuals. So again, in our report, we talk about 5 trends. I'll just highlight them real quickly as just a template in the way that you can hear about all these founders and their experiences. The first is that tech-enabled senses heighten the human experience. And so how do we achieve new levels of performance and well-being, as I just spoke about? The second is that digitized senses are unlocking a new value chain. So this is not just important for individuals, but businesses are achieving more through digitized senses. And then third is that brain to sense relationship. It really helps in disease detection. So we're all here in the healthcare space trying to help create healthy lives and earlier detection, and the brain is connected to the senses, which has a big part to do with that experience. The fourth is that sensory substitution technology supports disability. So how can we look at those on the edge and look at new technologies like AI navigation glasses and help those who are most in need? And then the fifth is that AI ensures safety through sensory technology. So we always think of big bad AI, but could AI uncover new ways to sense our environment and actually protect us from toxic smells that maybe we can't all smell or is at such a level? So just a little bit of background. And now I want to bring in our panelists. We have a fantastic group of founders. I mean, being a founder in healthcare takes a lot of grit and energy and thoughtfulness. And so I have a lot of admiration for our panelists here who are not deterred by many of the challenges that come with innovating in a space that is both technology and health. So that in itself is very impressive. And so I think we'll get a lot out of this conversation. We've brought together founders that are enhancing, analyzing, and activating our senses to optimize that human performance, like I was just speaking about. So the first question we're going to ask is kind of fun, and it's 2 parts, but if you could supercharge one sense, what would it be? And if you could just tell us briefly about your company. So Catherine, let's start with you.
Okay. Yeah, if I can supercharge one sense among the traditional 5 senses, it would be hearing. Yeah, our sense of hearing is so crucial to our interactions with the world, from understanding other people to detecting potential dangers. So imagine being able to pinpoint the exact location of a sound source, or identify things in the greater details, or to hear frequencies or more delicate timbres beyond the human ranges in an objective manner. The possibilities are endless. And yeah, my company Sound of Health is revolutionizing healthcare by turning everyday sounds into a valuable health insight. Our AI-powered technology listens to the sounds around us, from our breathing, speech, to our bathroom sounds, and extract meaningful symptoms data. So without any additional hardware, just using the smartphone of ours, we are able to provide the doctors and patients with accurate, actionable information on conditions from respiratory health, urinary health, and some cognitive health assessment as well. So our goal and mission is to make healthcare more accessible and personalized through the simple power of sound. Yeah, I will turn it to Charles.
Well, that's amazing. I think when you think about the sense the sense of hearing, and as I was saying about IoT, we used to use that IoT to connect sounds when you weren't in a room, and now it sounds like your company is helping providers hear the sounds when they're not in the room with a patient or an individual. So that's really powerful, and being able to extend that detection when they're not there.
Yeah, exactly.
Charles, we'll go over to you.
Thanks. So my first reaction is to second Catherine and hearing, especially speech comprehension, thinking, how often is something misunderstood in a conversation and how detrimental that can be to our relationships and ability to perform. But I also thought it'd be interesting to mention scent of smell, because that's something that humans are a little bit weak on. So you imagine a lot of other animals can do things, detect things that we don't even know are present, or learn things about people just by how they smell. For example, there's dogs that can detect if you have Parkinson's by being able to smell it. So that's something that we could improve on. And a little background about myself. I'm trained in brain-computer interfaces. Sharper Sense was born out of my doctoral research at Columbia University and is a neuromodulation technology. So instead of using a pharmaceutical drug to alter brain activity, we use targeted electrical energy to activate certain brain regions that drive a benefit. And specifically what Sharper Sense does is enhance the clarity of your senses. So think sharper hearing, vision, and touch. And we're packaging this into a wearable neurostimulation patch. And it's really tapping into the brain's natural ability to enhance your senses when you're attentive and alert. So if you walk into a crowded room and you want to hear someone's voice over the background noise, you pay attention to it and it becomes more clear. We figured out what's happening in the brain, and now we're activating that on demand with Sharper Sense. A lot of different applications, performance enhancement for athletes, defense, et cetera, but also clinical applications like improving speech comprehension or helping with learning disorders that we hope to eventually push this technology to.
Wow. So it's kind of like dynamic hearing in a way.
Yeah, basically putting your brain in the optimal zone. So, and you could tell that takes a little bit of effort, right? If you're in a loud place for a long time, it tires you out to stay focused on someone's voice. And as you get older, it's something that's hard to do. Or if you're distracted, or and defense personnel operating for long times, these are all time points when it gets harder to naturally focus and bring out that enhancement of senses, and we can drive it on demand.
Great. I think we'll definitely get into how that's connected to the brain and other senses as well. Tarun, what about you?
Yeah, thanks for those great answers. If I could supercharge one sense, I think it would be one of the inner senses, and perhaps proprioception, right? Our sense of self, our sense of inwards identity, because that is how we experience the lens of all the outer senses, and our outer world is sort of how we're feeling on the inside. So getting really in tune with that and making sure there's like that proper sensory integration of the world around us, but also within us, is, I think, a really important thing that now we're starting to understand a lot better. Part of what we're doing at Reality Center and Reality Management Technologies is really pioneering that fusion of cutting edge sensory technologies with the wisdom of these ancient practices, where our cultures have known a lot of these things for so long, and we're starting to really understand the nuances behind that inherent knowledge. So our focus is on creating immersive multisensory experiences that don't just treat symptoms, but elevate the human condition. And we harmonize light, sound, and vibration to bring together into this state of sensory resonance where people can tap into their innate ability to heal and transform their lives. And our goal is to make it accessible and a simple way that the general public can access some of these higher states of being.
I think higher states of being sounds really good, right? Actually, I'm gonna keep on you, Tarun, and ask you to just go a little bit deeper on that, because I'm sure everyone's very intrigued right now about your origin story and what motivates you to enhance the senses. So a lot of the sensory technology is focused on entertainment, retail, marketing, all these different industries. What drew you to this category of healthcare, wellness, human performance, elevating that human experience?
Absolutely. Well, as somebody with anxiety and ADHD growing up that I didn't really know about, it was just a feeling. We all go on these journeys of self-care where we want to figure out what can we solve about these challenges that we're having. And through my lens, which was more of a creative, intuitive lens, I was able to find things like energy healing and technologies like binaural beats back when I was in high school that allowed me to enter a state that I could not necessarily get to very easily on demand. And that really opened the door to a wide number of possibilities where I was like, okay, well, there's these different codes that we're getting, these unique frequencies and bands which mimic the natural biorhythms like the brain waves, the heart rate, breathing rate. And when those things are all synchronized together, this really magical thing happens where we're able to very much tune in, and these integration of our senses, but also these inner and outer worlds, more of a spiritual harmony that we all are looking to be in, right? We can amplify things, we can depress them, but what we really want to do is just really get in tune with ourselves. And so my journey took me through healing not only myself, but people in my community. And for the last 15 years, I've been working a lot with veterans, specifically combat veterans with PTSD. And when you're turned up to an 11 or 12, it's really hard to do these things like quiet the mind, meditate, mindfulness. So an active, engaging experience that meets you where you're at and then can harmonize and bring you to a target state was something that was really critical to be able to achieve that. So we went from, helping equestrian therapies for vets and really amplifying messages as I owned a creative agency. And that was our focus, is we want to tell these stories. Then through all this research, we started realizing, hey, there's stuff that's actually been out for 20 years. Technologies that were looked at as a little bit more niche. But now, as we are realizing the power of light, sound, vibration, these external senses harmonizing, allowing for our internal senses, I was able to provide this to our community. So we've all been impacted by suicide, by mental health, physical health issues in our families and our communities. And this was just one thing that allowed people of any skill set to tap into that inner place of healing and really self-care without needing anything to do but just lie down and receive.
Yeah. Well, I think you're hitting on a theme here that we've seen, is that this space of putting the senses at the center versus, we'll call it the body, even though our senses are part of our body, at the center, has changed the dynamic of who was the entrepreneur once on the edges of healthcare into the center of healthcare. And I think you're bringing a really fantastic perspective that in the sort of standard healthcare scientific community, we don't hear as much about. So I think this space really gives an opportunity for new types of entrepreneurs and new perspectives to come in. And I'm going to turn it over to Charles to share your origin story and what brought you and what drew you to innovate in this category.
Yeah, I think, following up on that, really there's been a large growth in the idea of the importance of mental health and brain health. And, it's went from something that was, people had to feel shameful for mental disorders to now feeling comfortable to talk about them and get the treatment they need. And I think you're also seeing that echoed even in a government level. I was at a United Nations event last week here in New York, and there was a great quote from the Brain Capital Alliance that said, our brains right now are in the red right when we need them in the black. So, and they're looking at that from not just individual health, but from, the health of the country, health of economies. So I think, we're going to see a lot of focus on driving technology to those spaces. And long-term, Sharper Sense, we think, has great potential for addressing a lot of clinical impairments. In the short term, we're, let's say, testing and proving out this technology with some of the elite performers among us, top athletes, top defensive personnel, et cetera, because they're pushing the envelope of this technology, and it can help drive it to a place where eventually it can be accessible for all.
Mm-hmm. And you're really pointing to something that in the last few, let's say 5 to 10 years, we've been hearing a lot about mental health. And in some ways, this is the same side of the coin with senses is a matter of mental health. Catherine, what about you? What about your origin story, or what drew you to innovate in this space?
Yeah, I was drawn to the healthcare and wellness due to a personal connection and a unique opportunity at the same time. So first, my family history inspired me to explore how technology could improve health outcomes and help caregivers and care team. Well, my father's passed away 15 years ago. Yeah, suddenly. So witnessing his challenges and challenges I faced as a caregiver and my care team's caregivers, yeah, made me passionate about developing solutions that could make a real difference for them. And secondly, when I started a company, I noticed a significant gap in the market. So most companies then were focusing on a visual data, like image, video, yeah, these things. But the potential of sound and audio signal, acoustic signals was largely untapped, underutilized significantly. So I recognized that by harnessing the power of everyday sounds, that we could gain valuable insights into a person's health and well-being. So this unique approach led me to innovate in the healthcare space to date.
Yeah, that sounds definitely deeply personal. Thank you for turning that into something that will benefit others. And just, moving from you all personally, and at the end, I'm going to ask everybody here to put in the chat what their 1 cent they want Supercharged to be. So let's see what you're thinking about right now and how this discussion might change that. But, there's a recent explosion in this space. Like I was saying before, there's a whole Internet of Senses market. I didn't make that up. That was Erickson who coined that. And it encompasses technologies, amplifying, again, digitizing all these sensory experiences. And it's projected to soar over 80 billion in the next few years. That's not nothing. So why now? Why this growth now? Is it that we move from things to people? Charles, do you have any thoughts? It sounds like you were just at a massive event where there clearly is interest in this space. What's driving this growth?
Yeah, so I think, there's the obvious advancement in electronics that's driving growth across all fields, miniaturization, better processing power, increased memory, better batteries, allowing for more wearables. But diving a little bit deeper, you can see how those things are specifically changing the field of senses. We have much better sensory technology for recording content, better microphones, better cameras. We have much better displays for feeding content back, better TVs, better headphones, etc. And I think maybe even more important than this now high definition ability to both record and produce content is the really huge amount of access to content that everyone has. So, I grew up in the 90s and you were happy to have a small CD collection. Now everyone has Spotify and has access to more songs than they could listen to in their lifetime, or more videos than they could ever watch. So huge explosion of both sensory content and ability to both produce and display it.
Yeah, so I am echoing the Charles. Yeah, I also see several key technical enablers of exponential growth in computing power thanks to advance in the semiconductor microprocessors and the miniaturization of sensors, smaller, more affordable sensors everywhere. And I'd like to add advancement in the AI, ML, the machine learning and generative AI things, or those to efficiently process and interpret a flood of sensory data from everywhere.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's also important to talk about how, with the hundreds of millions of smart speakers and everything that we're using based on our voice commands, as Catherine pointed out, there's so much data in there, and there's also expectations from the customer, right? Why should I have to continually sign up again and again? Why should I have to separate my user journey every time I step into a new space? Right. So by being able to understand where that person is at any given moment, especially through their voice, which is something that we're researching and also looking at as ways to connect not only our service, but with other services that you might be using that might be more specialized. I think it's really critical to look at how the user is actually going to be driving this and what type of world do they want to be in. And I think that is one of the reasons that we all are so motivated is, from these personal stories, hey, how can I actually bring this to a wider audience with our special sets of skills and resources?
Yeah, so it sounds like there's the technology piece, right? It got smaller, more powerful. We put that on items, but then there's also the user base there now that wants to go to the next level. So that's a perfect recipe for growth, right? And I know one area of growth that has been steadily growing and also scaling, that started with a subset of users, is biohacking. I don't even know if it's fair to say that there's recent growth, because it's been steadily growing over the last decade or so alongside technology. It's another space that is expected to grow exponentially over the next 8 to 10 years. So the different ways sensory technologies can enhance human performance. What is that about? What are these new ways, Charles, if you could talk about that recent growth and some of the ways that weren't available 10 years ago?
Yeah, yeah. And of course, there is a large movement. Everyone wants performance enhancement, and I think there's even really now a group of people, some would call them, that are focused on a transhumanist future where we can move beyond what we are now. Extra human intelligence, extra perception. So I think that's very exciting, and well, we can push for progress there. And those are the people that might lead, the advancements in this industry because they're most excited about it. I think it's interesting to look back at what we've done previously for human performance enhancement. Of course, training has existed for a long time, but if you look back thousands of years, it's still a relatively new idea. But we can train our brain or senses to get better. You can take pharmaceutical drugs, and things like Adderall or Ritalin have been shown to enhance performance on different sensory games, but these have had a variety of different side effects and aren't fully controlled, let's say, their time course. And we've made a lot of external filters, glasses, hearing aids, et cetera. So I'm excited now, for what neuromodulation can bring to the table as somewhat of a replacement for drugs. Many people call it bioelectronic medicine. But the idea is that we can drive similar enhancements to your natural sensory processing system without some of the side effects or the inability to shut off the effects when desired that drugs have. So I think that has a lot of promise because at the end of the day, having your natural senses is so much nicer than having something in the way. So I've had a chance to try out a lot of hearing aids. If you don't have to wear one, you don't want to. So how can we keep advancing our own senses? And I think advancements in neurotech are also looking at how can we maintain our eyes, ears, et cetera, so they don't fade with us in age. All very interesting. And then I think in the future, there's a ton of progress for augmented reality, virtual reality, to be, let's say, the new type of filter in the information stream there that can be much more powerful than passive lenses, et cetera. But I would say we need a little bit better technology in that space before we see widespread adoption. Although Meta did just release their AR glasses yesterday, so you can see a lot of money's going into them.
Yeah, but before we move over to that, I think you make a lot of great points just about the neurotech and the augmented reality tech. So being both on the training side and in the real-time augmentation side in a way that, like you said before, there would just be a pill and it would come and go. I know that from one of our early futures reports was on the future of performance, and we brought forward a company, did a pilot on performance for your eyes. It was called Synaptech. And so it's that 10% for a lot of athletes that they're just left lower peripheral is weak, and it could mean the difference between scoring a goal. And there's a translation there, right, for drivers and people in their everyday life. And there's the sixth sense, actually, we'll get to that in a little bit. I already saw a question about that in the chat that has to do with where your body is in space and how all your senses are connected to knowing where your body is in space and your overall performance. So it sounds like some of these technologies are real-time augmentation and then also help with training.
Yeah, actually, I've met some of the Synaptech team. I think what they're doing is very cool. They have glasses that will black out every other frame that you're seeing and makes your brain train a little bit harder to pull out the content from that. And they also have a lot of training systems in general for enhancing performance. So I think more than ever, athletes are focusing on that, and that's driving even more development into this space.
Yeah. So moving back over to the big news in AR and AI, Catherine, what role does artificial intelligence play in sensory technology, and specifically with your technology treating patients in a healthcare setting, and how to use AI in your tech?
Yeah, the realization that there are so many different sounds that can provide clues to the various disease and conditions, well, that's truly remarkable, yeah, to me. So, although we can think that the traditional medical practice has always heavily relied on the human senses. So traditional doctors, have always relied on all their senses possible to observe, diagnose, and treat patients, right? So while technology has advanced, the essence of sensing remains deeply human yet. So it's what allowed us to connect with the world around us, and by leveraging AI machine learning technologies to enhance our sensory abilities and enhance our analytical abilities, to combining all the reliable data and analyze, interpret its meaning. Then we can uncover hidden patterns and improve patient care. Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else? Any thoughts on the AI integration?
I think
I think-
Catherine had a
oh,
great
go
point
ahead.
earlier that AI is really going to help process what is a huge amount of data right now that it's really hard for individuals to parse through. So I think that will be a very interesting. And also there's a lot of content being generated by AI now, both music, movies, et cetera. So further advancing that side of the spectrum.
Yeah, I agree with that. Also tuning, people's individual understandings of how to use the technology, how to use all this information is something that we're really interested in. There's, if you watch one episode of Huberman Lab, you're going to be, on a new protocol every day. And I think that's beautiful and amazing. But as somebody who's very in tune with biooptimization and its current status, it can be overwhelming amounts of data and different instructions and modalities, and many of them not having as much information as we would like in order to make critical healthcare decisions. And so once again, why all these different powers combined really provide a excellent tool set that AI can then be used to assist instead of instruct, and having the human element as a deep part of that contextual learning is going to be, I think, really important as we move forward.
Yeah, but starting from your diagnostic or collecting data, but what AI now can help us for the clinical reasoning or the more data-backed decision making and complex analysis, and also support our complex workflow for a more efficient one. So quickly adopted, I'm seeing in the clinical settings.
Yeah, it sounds like AI is really bringing to light the subjectivity of our senses, that we all, you think about even just color deficiency in the eye, through the eyes, that we don't think about the ways in which our senses differ with smell and taste and other things. And so AI, it can help parse through that and create a sense of objectivity. So in the sense of Catherine's patients, they might hear something every day and not think that there's a problem, but through her solution, that can be uncovered. So on this point, moving to inner senses, Tarun, how are inner senses different from the standard 5 senses, and how does that affect our mental health? And then I'll bridge us into the 6th sense.
Yeah, what a great question, an important one in that sense. The inner senses, I think, are the connecting tissue with the outer senses, right? Like our limbic system, our amygdala, these ways that we experience the world around them and process them. When a traumatic incident happens, those are the sensors that are actually paying attention and sending these signals to our memory, sometimes to our subconscious memory, in which when we experience that form of threat again, we get that feeling again as a warning in order to prevent us from injury. Right. So one of the key aspects of that inner state of being, that ability to self-regulate through breathing, through awareness, through various practices that are some of the older traditional ones, as well as things like contrast therapy, breath work, all of the aspects of controlling your nervous system that we're finding today, as well as sensory technologies like ours, you're able to tap into that inward intelligence, that empathy, that intuition, that I feel it in my heart, or I feel it in my gut, all the things that we say oftentimes, but haven't really given a lot of weight to their importance. So the inner senses are really just the ability to process and also command those outer senses, because we see the world based on how we're feeling on the inside. So it's really important to understand oneself and the responsibility and control you have over your reality. And that's why, literally, but also in a tongue-in-cheek way, our company is called Reality Management Technologies. because with all this data, with all this power through AI and technology and just information in general, this is this opportune moment for us to be able to make sense of all of it, to put a lot of this information into a bucket in which we can provide it in an accessible way to the general public, and they can learn how to empower themselves, because the greatest gift I think you can give somebody is agency over their own well-being.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can go in, this was sort of the tension in our report, right? Is that the sensory technology can be a substitute to support those with disability to have a wider and greater reality, like you're saying with your business. And at the same time, from a business value chain perspective, companies are using the senses to form a deeper reality and a deeper connection with their consumers. So it's not just on the patient side, it's also us as consumers. When you're saying listen to yourself, listen to your senses, we also might need to pay attention to how our senses are being impacted, maybe manipulated sometimes too. What do you think about that, Tarun?
I think that you're absolutely right. I mean, for a long time, obviously billions, probably trillions of dollars at this point have gone into the advertising mechanisms in order to gain your attention, to gain your children's attention, right? To make us feel a certain way when we walk into a building, into a retail stand. I came from the world of marketing and outside entertainment. And when your whole goal is to evoke an emotion or behavior of somebody from interacting with these outward senses, that can there can be a toll, not only on the consumer, but on yourself, and the one that is really like, hey, how am I taking responsibility for how these people are acting? And so through our technology, we found that actually you can use those same things like light patterns, certain types of sound and music, which is really that universal language, lights and frequencies at these different ranges, the sense of smell, but you can do that in a harmonic state and help somebody go inwards. Well, we also have what we call entertainment, or these sort of large scale experiences, immersive experiences that use similar tuning, but in more of a spectacle and more of a social experience. So I think what you're going to start seeing a lot more of now, because it's really something that's being demanded of us as people want activations for the general public, and they want their retail stores to make you feel good. And I was in LAX earlier at one of the new terminals. All of their lighting has now shifted to warm lighting at certain times of day. So people are starting to understand, hey, I can make people feel more comfortable. I can make them actually want to be at this place and get more out of the relationship between this brand and the consumer themselves by actually looking out for them.
Yeah, as you said, you're in a different reality depending on how your senses are being impacted or manipulated or designed for in different spaces. So that's why sometimes the airport feels like an alternate reality, literally. So it's very interesting to think, not just I know we're in a healthcare kind of community, but also how that works in other industries like retail, where scent is being now used more and more to evoke the sort of behavior or feeling that makes people want to shop. And so that's important to keep in mind in this conversation as well, though we're focused on health. We did get a question also about from John. Are there any thoughts on our critical sixth sense, vestibular balance, and its important link to vision via vestibular optical reflexes? And I know when we were designing our report, we did think about including, it's called proprioception, and that's what allows us to keep track of where our body parts are in space. And that balance system is what's important for stabilizing our gaze, keeping clear vision when we're moving our head. So that balance system is essential for doing day-to-day activities. And that's why at VSP, we talk so much about your well-being, being able to be productive and healthy and move through the world when you can't see it impacts all parts of what you're able to do in the world. So any thoughts there on the sixth sense and its link to whether it's the vision or the brain or the smell or sounds, other senses?
I would say
that was the sense I wanted to amplify. So I've already spoken about it. I would love to hear Charles's thoughts on it.
Oh, I was just going to say it is, something that I think is underappreciated, and the idea that you can put your hands behind your back and touch your pointer fingers together without being able to see them is really interesting. And it's actually something, as people are looking at designing neuroprosthetics, the idea of replacing, your arm if you lose it with a robotic one, that's a difficult problem in the field, because right now you have to be able to visually see where your neuroprosthetic arm is to guide it, because you don't have that type of proprioception. So there's a lot of progress I think that can be made in that space. And I would say one of the groups that is aware of the importance of that is athletes. They're well aware of how important it is for them to be able to control their body and know, where their limbs are and how they're moving, et cetera. So I think we can learn from some of their trainings and findings too.
And I am also intrigued by emerging advancement in pain tracking and management, including the senses about ourselves, or the vestibular or the nociceptions or proprioceptions, equilibrioceptions, like that. So the ability to accurately measure and understand pain is crucial for developing effective care. So I believe that a revolution in pain management, pain tracking is urgently needed. By leveraging those technologies, we can enable personalized treatment plans and improve patient outcomes while reducing the substance misuse or overuse.
Yeah, absolutely. I think one interesting thing to bring up is, the old experiment where they put a dummy arm next to your real arm and you hide it, and they hit that dummy arm with a mallet and people feel a sense of pain, right? So it's this aspect of embodiment and also your projection of your reality that allows you to decide what signals to pay attention to, right? So there's some advancements in pain management right now where instead of saying, hey, this hurts, or I'm experiencing this consistent pain, maybe I'm not as comfortable as I should be. And you're taking back control of your body's pain response and signals in order to send a message that there's a certain way that I expect to feel. I'm not there at this moment, but I'm going to take control of my reaction. And so I think that's why that sense of self, that somatic psychological connection is so critical to understand, where we're not just looking at these signals and these symptoms. We're also hitting people from that inner space of intelligence.
Great. These are great answers. And I if you haven't seen that experiment with the dummy arm, that is truly it kind of brings to light the point that the group here is making. I'm going to read another question from the audience, and if anyone else has a question, please populate the Q&A. It would be, so this is from Ayal from 212 Innovation Labs. It would be cool to hear what the panel thinks about the possibility of sensory connectivity. In other words, brain connecting seamlessly, thus creating essentially a power multiplication or sharing or even cloning of the experience of being, which is very much related to what we were just talking about.
Yeah, I could start on this one because there's a lot of conversation about this in the field of neuroscience, and there's already been some, let's say, breakthrough experiments showing the ability to connect brains. I know there was one, for example, where they had two individuals in fully separated rooms playing a video game together. One individual could only see the content, and they would read from his brain the visual perception, and the other individual had the controller but could not see anything. So his only input of when to, I think, fire a cannon was the goal of the game, was this brain-to-brain interface, and they were able to effectively, play this game. So that's a very, let's say, early stage idea of linking these brains. I know there's a popular novel right now called Nexus that and is exploring, let's say, what could be is a good example of, thoughts exploring what could be the far future when neural connection technology is miniaturized and super dense, high bandwidth. And there's the idea of, yes, could you even tap into other people's memories of sensory experiences, or see things through their eyes, et cetera? And what would that mean for having better empathy or understanding people's experiences more? It's all very exciting in the future.
Awesome. Well, let me go to another question here. We had a few come in, so we'll do a little lightning round. So this is from Michael. Would increasing the sense of smell also impact other senses and the integration of information into the brain, since the sense of smell is related to a more ancient part of the brain and is the first sense to show decrement with the onset of dementia in some studies?
I could talk a little bit about, I think multisensory integration is all a very interesting topic, and there's a lot of research being done there. I think it's something that we all kind of take for granted. You know, an interesting thing is that when the light hits your eyes or when the audio hits your ears isn't when perception happens. Those are really, you can think of sensors for the brain, and they encode that information to a signal, but the signal then goes through the brain and is processed by multiple regions. And a lot of these regions will process multiple senses. So you can think of the pathway that vision, hearing, and touch go through is, you know, relatively similar. And through these pathways, we have this integration where we can use multiple senses to more accurately gauge things or perceive things, which is a great power of our mind and something that we can also train to improve. So I think that's an interesting field of study. Scent, I know, has a slightly different pathway, but also can be integrated in the brain. So I'm not expert on that, so I'll refrain from commenting.
Anyone else?
It is one of the greatest senses that is associated with temporal space, or, you know, moments, right? There is certain smells that remind you of people, of certain situations. And so it really provides some connection to those inner senses of these memories, these intuitions, these feelings that we may get as these external senses, like the olfactory system, are reminding us of something that may be intriguing or something that we need to move away from, right? Like you smell a barbecue, if or, you know, certain things that your mom may have been cooking, that not only provides you with this instant reaction of hunger in the mouth, in the salival glands, all of these different, you know, physical responses, but also an emotional response. So I think that's a really fascinating intersection when you can actually start mapping some of the emotional responses that we have to certain things that are these external stimuli, and providing user feedback and understanding that there is these specific ways that we can interact with the world around us, and sort of amplify some of the positive experiences and be aware of the things that might trigger us, and move away from them or move to adjust them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there are some senses that are meant to help you think more clearly or to evoke different sensations, right? And in our report, we shared that global market, the olfactory technology market, is valued at 324 million right now. By 2031, it's supposed to be at 4 billion. So this is the new frontier, and it's a great point in question to bring up. Just a little tidbit on our team. We're a virtual distributed team all around the country at the VSP Global Innovation Center. But early on, when we went remote, decided that we were going to have an official scent for our team. So everyone on our team has the same candle to sort of connect us. So smell is definitely deeply rooted sense, and can evoke a sense of connectivity. There's another question here about the aging population, and Elena asks, how are you seeing, or how would you imagine these technologies impacting the elderly? And I'm sure, Catherine, you have a lot of thoughts on that.
Yeah, so I'll take that. Then most of our patients and health customers are the Medicare populations. They have a multiple comorbidity of the various chronic diseases, but the problem is they're not aware of their symptoms. And the care team is heavily rely on their subjective report or the history check. It's a long, winding conversation. And doing some measurement is a huge load for the care team and even for the patients and or the health consumer for themselves. And in our recent clinical studies, we've repeatedly found that over half of the patients and health consumers' self-reported symptoms or descriptions don't accurately reflect their actual condition as measured. So understanding this gap or this discrepancy is crucial for the healthcare professionals, as it highlights the importance of using both subjective reports and history checks and objective measurement assessments to accurately diagnose their conditions. So is we are trying to combining those patient report outcomes with objective measurements while reducing the load of the tracking their symptoms every day. For example, smart speakers everywhere, a camera with the capturing the positions and the work, or the sounds or everything for the respiratory health, or fall detections, or any other all the diseases, the sleep tracking or whatever. So through that we can gain a more comprehensive understanding of a person's health and well-being. Oh, that's what I'm doing. So we really care about the aging population and how their declining capability of senses, how can we augment and or intensify their capabilities, and the delegate care teams.
Yeah, it sounds like you can have a whole new aging experience just with the new technologies that are available today. A follow-up for you, Catherine. Do you see pain understanding as, this is from Elena, see pain understanding as the gap in understanding between the patient and the care team? And I know Tarun and a few others have talked about the pain gap.
Well, definitely there's the huge gap. It depends on some memory biases or some personal different baseline or personal level of patients, or or cultural or all the other, there are psychological matters as well. And beyond the pain, we also tracking the urinary health, about the prostate and bladder, and the respiratory health with the chronic cough and sleep problems. Consistently observed the gap between how they feel and their actual conditions. So we try to reduce the gap and they give a more comprehensive view for the better care.
Yeah. Okay, this is a quick one. So Apple released this from Ayad AirPods that includes hearing loss enhancement function. Has anyone tried it yet? And can you compare it to traditional devices? What's the usefulness and future of such a device?
I haven't tried it yet. Has anyone else on the panel? Although I've seen a ton of excitement. I'm connected to a lot of audiologists and others in hearing research, and they're all really excited about putting these hearing aids into people's hands. There's been a huge problem of people adopting hearing aids. Only a small fraction of those that could use them actually do. And one of the largest reasons is because hearing aids are kind of a badge of being an older adult. So by baking this technology into earbuds that everyone's wearing that are a cool accessory, it really will make it not just easier to put it in people's hands, but easier for them to wear it and wear it confidently and happily. And I think that's super important because of all the recent research that's been linking impairments in hearing with accelerated dementia onset and progression. And I think, there's similar linkages with vision too, but your ability to hear and see clearly is so important for social interaction, which is critical for keeping the brain young, but is also very important for being able to live an independent life. If you want to go out to stores or go out in public and run errands, perform tasks, etc., all those need those clear senses. And as those fade with age, that makes everything more difficult. So if we can take that burden off by better maintaining these senses with age, that'll be really important. And I think that goes back to what some people talk about, they call increasing the years of healthy aging. There's been progress that's extended the lifespan, but a lot of this extension on the back end is, let's say, not the happiest years of our life, right? So what can we do to make sure that we're not just extending your lifespan, but actually extending these healthy, active years? I think care of senses will be critical for that.
Yeah, and I noticed that 10 years ago, the hearing aid can be over-the-counter prescribed. So Apple teams are preparing for this project more than 10 years. And I heard a couple of things from the development team. And I anticipate a great user experience because today, making a hearing aid, get the right hearing aid, it will take us 3 to 12 months to get the right one for me, because we need the exact form factor to put in. And then we need to adjust the exact level for each other's conditions. But there's a huge inefficiency with the logistics managers and all the different the workflows. So I will expect really great efficiency and great user experience adjusting on our the palm tops with the iPhone. So it will be the huge opportunity. Apple, the smart move, I think.
You're going to see also a lot of the auditory services are now coming under the umbrella of optometrists as well. And so that's, I think, will cause people to check their auditory abilities before they even think that they need to.
Yeah, I was going to mention a new technology that's exciting too, I think, is EssilorLuxottica, the #1 sunglass maker, has came out with a pair of glasses that look like a normal set of Ray-Bans, but have microphones all across the front. for real nice pickup, and then actually amplify the sound next to your ears.
Yeah.
And they're actually, marketing those not just towards older adults, but even younger adults. Now, something like 20% of everyone over the age of 18 struggles with speech and noise. So that's another way that tying in that auditory with a visual accessory, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, to that.
more popular than ever. Yeah, Tarun.
Yeah, to that point, I think a lot of it, the greatest opportunity is in preventative care as well. So a lot of things that we're focused on is user-controlled, informed biofeedback. And so as, over time, especially with companies like Apple, Samsung, who have a ubiquitous market share that can start detecting some impairment early on and be able to train the user in order to improve the sensory integration and connection. I think that's a really amazing opportunity with having all of this built into the devices. They also have patents on haptic stimulus through the ear pod. So there's a brain, disconnected brain interfaces through those ear pods. So I think they see a future in which there's a big part of our lives that are governed by those tools.
And before the final question, one quick one I want to squeeze in from the audience has to do with touch. And I know in our report, we talk a lot about haptics, and we didn't talk as much about that today. Maybe Charles, do you want to just share a little bit about the kind of research that's being done?
Yeah, I think it's a really exciting, especially when you look at what's being done in the virtual reality space, right? How can we, basically digitize haptic sensations, et cetera, and even in our interaction with our own devices, touch screens, et cetera, touch is becoming even more important. There's been interesting, they've done brain imaging of children now, and the region of the brain that's dedicated to their thumb is much larger than previous generations because they're spending so much time using that to interact with their touchscreen devices. So I think that's a field that will continue to grow, and really I think VR will push that. There's an interesting company in that space called Neosensory, and what they're doing is converting things like audio signals into haptic sensations and using that sense of touch to actually drive other sensory content through there as well. So that's another interesting thing in that field.
Awesome. Okay, we got 20 seconds for this last final question while everyone thinking about what sense would you augment in the audience, everyone on our panel. What does the future of senses look like? Is it the future is healthy, the future is productive, the future is relaxing? If you could just give us a phrase of what is the future of senses? What kind of world does that create? And we'll start with Catherine.
Well, yeah, the more trackable, shareable, the organized, structured information to make it healthy. Or
Awesome. Tarun?
I think personalized digital supplements.
Great. Charles?
Yeah, and I would go, I think in the future senses will be more important than ever. And something interesting I was thinking about is, you think of the Industrial Revolution making, let's say, muscle or strength not as important, and now the revolution we are in electronics, making things like, low-level sorting, menial tasks easier done for us. And maybe even in the future, AI will start making high-level thought something that's less valued because it can take that over. But nowhere at that step do our senses become less important, because we're constantly still going to need our vision, hearing, and touch to interact with all these systems. And if we eventually get in a world where we're unloading a lot of our work onto these machines, then we'll need our senses more than ever to socialize and turn our things to the type of learning or other tasks that we find most rewarding.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. This was a very engaging conversation throughout. A lot of great information, anecdotes, stories, a lot of great innovation solutions and tech mentioned here for people to follow up with. We'll just flash up the QR code to our Futurist report. Hopefully this has piqued your interest in not only reading the report, but meeting with these founders and trying their solutions. And so we'll have more on this, and you can also send the recording to any of your colleagues and see how you might integrate the future of senses into your work, into your team, into your efforts. So thank you so much to Matter and to the panelists here, and we'll see you next time.